This is Dennis Ramundi. I'm here with my co-host, Phil Goldberg, author of American Veda, our podcast, Spirit Matters, found at spiritmatterstalk.com. Our focus, contemporary spirituality, and our guest today, Mr. Gurvinder Singh. He is the finance director and international director of United Sikhs Aid, the humanitarian aid wing of United Sikhs. And he has long been involved with this organization and has been involved in dealing with disasters worldwide. Mr. Singh, thank you so very much for taking the time to come on our show today.
Phil and Dennis, I'm indebted to you guys, and really thank you for the opportunity to let your listeners and the audience know what we do and what we're about. So we are deeply indebted, and we are very appreciative for the opportunity.
Thank you. Gurvinder, we've been wanting to have a spokesperson for the Sikh Faith for a while on the show, and we're delighted that you could come on and enlighten our listeners about Sikhism and some of what's going on, particularly in the U.S. So let us begin by, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your own background. You are living in Dallas, Texas. What brought you there, or were you always there, and were you born Sikh?
Yes, I was born in Punjab, which is the origin of the Sikh faith. Is in the border of, it's in northwest India. Northwest India, and borders Pakistan, if you will, and there's also a portion of Punjab in Pakistan as well. In fact, a larger portion. Mm-hmm. And we migrated to the States directly to Dallas, Texas, which is pretty odd, considering that the majority of immigrants arrive in New York or on the other coast in California. But we actually came to Texas because of family settled here. My aunt is a nurse with the veterans VA hospital, and we settled here and have been in Dallas, Texas since '85. And my father actually was a semi-pro field hockey player, and he had a really good job. But in terms of career and so forth, there was always a ceiling, and in terms of education as well. So he saw a better future for the family. Was to obviously migrate and leave everything behind, literally family, everything he's ever known, language, culture, identity, and so forth, and embark on something completely new. So really thank him for having the vision and for all the sacrifice to know that what could be accomplished in India, and obviously the immense opportunities in America that awaited us, and here we are.
Gurvinder, when in India, do the Sikh people experienced a lot of prejudice? Did it exist historically? Does it exist today? And how has that issue been dealt with in the States? Do you also find there's a lot of ignorance about who you are, what you believe in, and it's created limitations for the Sikh people?
I sincerely appreciate you asking the question. We actually migrated in '85. In '84, as I don't know if many of your listeners are aware, but India enacted a genocidal campaign actually against the Sikh community, which the Mecca, if you will, or the Vatican, if you will, of the Sikh religion, the central or the most popular place of worship, which is known throughout the world as the Golden Temple. Harmandir Sahib was actually attacked along with 37 other historical shrines, and then in November, pogroms were set in Delhi, Kanpur, in various cities throughout India. So there's not just discrimination, there's also, if you would, a portion of ethnic cleansing that has occurred. And unfortunately, it's occurred against each minority community. It's like a progression. Muslims will be targeted, Sikhs will be targeted, Christians will be targeted, Dalits will be targeted, the untouchables. And it's continuously ongoing right now. Even last year, over 50 churches were burned in Delhi alone. And there was there was just a vociferous outcry as to why that is occurring, and and reasons are always cloaked, and but we know from experience that it's just going to be a cycle where minorities will be targeted, and if there's political games that and then obviously the vote bank is there as well, and just to rile up and just to galvanize nationalist support, or always blame the other, similar and akin to what occurred in Nazi Germany, and absolutely, and it's still occurring to this day.
Let's, Gurvinder, can we bring it to the U.S.? You
Sure.
are, the Sikhs have been in the U.S. since at least the 19th century, maybe even longer.
Yes, sir.
And yet are widely misunderstood, and you've had a great deal of difficulty, especially post 9/11. Tell us about what Sikhs in the U.S. have had to deal with, and what you're about to embark on in July. We're recording this at the end of June 2017. You have a big event coming up in July having to do with the Sikhs as a minority group in the U.S.
Yes, sir. So given the historical background of what's occurring in India and what has occurred, so when Sikhs migrated to the States, it was obviously for freedom of religion, freedom of faith and expression, assembly. And for the most part, I can resoundingly say that is what we have experienced. Unfortunately, I was in elementary school and middle school, elementary school especially during the crisis with Iran and the Ayatollah. So I remember being younger and being likened to a follower of the Ayatollah, because that's what individuals would see on TV, or that's what they would hear about. Anybody wearing a turban or a headdress would be just, mimicked, or would be just put into that corner, if you will. Now, unfortunately, what we have seen for the vast majority of time on TV is going to be the Taliban, or it's going to be Osama bin Laden. So, unfortunately, again, you group accordingly to what you know. So now we've been put into that barrel, if you will, of extremists, of terrorists, because that's what you see on TV. And so if you see me with a turban, then you're going to liken me to, hey, he may be a follower of the Taliban, or he may be a well-wisher of bin Laden. So taking that into account, that is what has driven up the spike in hate crimes, in bullying, in discrimination, either at the workplace or even in the educational arena. And this is what we've encountered firsthand. There have been some horrendous instances, such as a young man who was savagely beaten, and he basically lost his left eye. There was an individual who was in his 50s, and he was, and this is in New York, in Queens, New York, and there was a family that had just celebrated, ironically, the christening of their child, and yet the males were outside the restaurant. They were drunk, and they encountered him, and they decided, what better way to celebrate the christening of a child than to savagely beat an elderly man. So, these are, and there have been shootings in Fresno, where elderly gentlemen were going out for a walk, and they were gunned down. So we've encountered these, but what we're really appreciative of is the response of the media, such as yourself. You've given us the opportunity. The local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies really working hand in hand to mitigate these occurrences and to work to ensure that they don't occur again, or to educate.
Right.
We work with the Department of Justice as well. So it's an ongoing process, but I can assuredly see that we see the different state mechanisms in play, that, in India, where you have a state mechanism which is trying to engage in discrimination itself. Over here, it's more or less individuals who are either just full of hate or individuals who are ignorant, but yet you have the state which is mitigating that by obviously curtailing any instances which happen or trying to prevent them from occurring.
Gurvinder, one thing I think our listeners should know is that Sikhs traditionally have served in the United States military in significant numbers, and I believe the United States military has been very impressed with the Sikh performance in the Army and the other branches of military service, and actually have made accommodations in terms of being able to wear the turban, have the longer hair, whatever. But tell us about that, because I think people really, there's great ignorance in this country, and they don't realize that going back to World War I, Sikhs have served in the United States Army, and many have been very highly decorated on the battlefield.
That's an excellent question, and that's an excellent point. In fact, over roughly about 100,000 Sikh soldiers lost their lives during the World Wars, which is a number that many don't know, and many more were injured and wounded, some critically. And we have historically the Sikh nation, or the Sikh people, have been staunch soldiers and to defend and to assist the downtrodden. So we carry that over, and obviously the United States is our country, and we're gonna fight and we're gonna defend it. And the Sikhs have been in the States since the late 1890s and the early 1900s, especially in California, laying the railroad lines. And the first Gurdwara was founded in California, in Stockton. And from there, you actually had Dalip Singh Thind, who actually was the first soldier who was in the United States Army, and he fought to attain citizenship status. Mm. And it's unfortunate that he was granted citizenship not because of the merits of his case, but simply because he fought for the nation. Mm. But then obviously you progress, and you have Lieutenant Colonel Sekhon, who actually is a decorated soldier based in California as well. And we have, and we're proud to announce that United Sikhs successfully fought a case against the Army, unfortunately, because we want to serve the Army also while professing our faith. And Ignore Singh just won the case. This was 2 years ago.
Right.
So we are fighting to serve in the Army. Like, please let us serve, because this is what we want to do. This is our nation. We want to defend our country against any enemies abroad or within the borders themselves. And we're going to continue to do so. And we would, and in fact, we have a lot of outpouring of questions and willingness to serve in the Army, and we are working on honing some more applications and working with the Army in that regards as well.
Gurvinder, let's back up a little bit and talk about the spiritual and historical dimensions of Sikhism. Many people have seen Sikhs around because you're very visible, with the men anyway, with turbans and so forth, but don't know much about it, have never been to a Gurdwara, and maybe you could fill us in a little bit about the background and origin of the faith.
That was a very well done with the pronunciation of Gurdwara, so I commend you on that, actually.
Good job.
Yes, sir, absolutely. The Sikh faith is a very modern faith in the terms of just its founding and how long it's been around. It's been around for more than 500 years. 1469 is the founding. In terms of the Sikh faith, we had 10 gurus, which were in living forms, and then after the 10th guru, the teachings and the principles are ordained in our holy scriptures, the Guru Granth Sahib, which is somewhat similar, if you will, to what a Bible is to a Christian or what a Quran is to a Muslim, but also different in the sense that it is our Guru in the Holy Scriptures. The Guru Granth Sahib is our eternal Guru because we bow down to the teachings of the Guru Granth Sahib. So if anyone goes to a Gurdwara, which is a Sikh place of worship and learning, then you will see that you have the Guru Granth Sahib. It's on a pedestal, which is a palki, and you have someone always behind the Guru Granth Sahib who's with a whisk and who's waving behind it to signify the importance, because we treat the Guru Granth Sahib as a king. So in the East, if you will, if anybody has seen, when a king moves, they have the king sitting on a pedestal. They're picking him up, and you have him covered by a canopy, and you have individuals behind him waving a whisk or what have you to signify the importance. And we do that similarly to the Guru Granth Sahib. So we bow down to the Guru Granth Sahib because of the teachings. The Guru Granth Sahib has the scriptures are written by the Gurus themselves, and also by saints of other faiths whose line of thought or principles fall in line with the ideology of Sikhism. The major traits of the Sikh faith, because obviously when we're founded in the Indus Valley around the area, you have the Hindu faith, you have the Islamic faith. It was also prevalent at that time. So what was the need of the Sikh faith to come into existence? It's a very revolutionary philosophy in the terms of men and women are treated equal. And in fact, our first guru said, "Sokyo mandaki jit jamme rajan," which means, how can you denounce those who give birth to kings? So if you're to treat a king so royally and regally, the one who gave birth to him, how can you sideline her? So women and men are treated equally. You have egalitarianism, in which you don't have a caste system, because again, where the faith originated, it was entrenched in the caste system. So you were already shifted at birth just because where you were born or who you were born to. So it didn't matter how intelligent you were, how capable you were, what kind of abilities you had, but simply because you were born into a family, you were either going to be a soldier, you were either going to be a priest, you're either going to be a layman, or you're going to be basically someone who's a servant. And that would stick with generations and generations. It could never change. So the Sikh faith has no caste, and every Sikh male has a last name of Singh, which means lion, to eradicate any thinking that I'm higher or lower than you. Every Sikh female has a last name or middle name of Kaur, which means lioness or princess. So that builds the sense of equality. The egalitarianism is there, and also the fundamental thought of giving back to your community. We believe if you want to serve the Creator, you have to serve His creation. So I cannot treat the creation with malice or with hate or trying to loot and rob the creation, and yet say I'm still a man or woman of God, and yet say I'm still pious, I'm still righteous, because I'm not treating His creation. If you are to honestly worship the Creator, then you are to treat His creation with respect. So giving back, we believe in daswant, which means to give back at least 10% of your time, your earnings, your intellect to the community. And we have a very fundamental set of principles in the sense that Nam Japana, which is to meditate upon the Almighty, Vandishakana, which is to share with those less fortunate. And when I say that, I don't mean that, Gurvinder gets, let's say, he gets a burger to eat. He eats his entire burger and he has a few fries left over, so then he goes and shares with his neighbor. No, it actually, to us, what that means is I give my food to my neighbor who's in need. If there's anything left over, I can take that. So it would mean sharing with the neighbor prior to partaking with yourself, because you already have the means and the capability. Your neighbor may not. So not to give him the crumbs of what you have left, but rather to give him the sustenance itself. And then we have kirt karni, which means to earn your living honestly. So, I can't earn my living by dealing drugs. I can't earn my living by engaging in nefarious occupations, but to earn it honestly. So, and then obviously you have the traits which we have physically in terms of our turbans, our beards. Women are actually requested to wear turbans, and many do, but you will also see some wearing scarves, that will just cover their head. We're not required to cover our face or our entire bodies or anything of that sort, but so that's our identity, is the religious garb that just like you had stated, you will see men with the colorful turbans a lot of times, and women with the colorful scarves, and that's how you can engage with a Sikh. And I would like to tell your listeners a very cool tidbit of information. If you ever encounter a man with a turban, 99% of the time they will be a Sikh, or a woman with a turban, they will be a Sikh. But to a man, you can always say, "How are you, Mr. Singh?" And you will be right 100% of the time.
I wonder how
and then
it
they may
works.
say, "Hey, how did you know my name?" And you don't want to share the secret, that you heard it from Gurvinder.
Well, I have to tell you, it is a little confusing.
How does it work
when
in the phone
everybody's
book in
name's
Punjab?
Singh?
Yeah. But we would have, and then we would obviously, like Gurvinder and then Singh, many use last names, but because they're caste names, some don't. And obviously some will put the village they're from, or what have you, or some will put Khalsa, which is the initiated class of Sikhs, in which we partake in Amrit, which is akin to baptism, would be for a Christian.
Can I ask you a follow-up, Dennis?
You go ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah. My doctor is a Sikh woman.
Okay.
And she does not, her last name is not Kaur, and she does not cover her head, at least in the office when I see her.
Okay.
So there are obviously exceptions to some of these guidelines, and people have their variation. And I want to, and in addition to asking about that, I wanted to mention, because you brought up, you used the example of feeding people. I've been to 2 Parliament of World Religions, and on every one of those occasions, the Sikhs are they occupy a huge area and somehow put together a kitchen and somehow feed 1,000 people at every meal. There's long lines, and it's incredibly efficient, and there's this mobilization of volunteers going around and feeding everybody, and it's delicious food, and it's a highlight of some of these gatherings for many people to experience that kind of a service that. And so I gather, from my own inquiry, that a lot of the service work and humanitarian work that Sikhs do is centered around feeding people. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And going back to your doctor, yes, many, just like many Sikh males do not wear turbans. So obviously, many women do not as well. But in terms of the name, a lot of times what they will use is like their first name and their last name. So Kaur will be the middle name. So if you're to go back to your doctor,
yeah, it probably is.
I can assure you her middle name will be Kaur. And in terms of the feeding, you are absolutely right. Because we believe in it's called Pelam Pangat Fir Sangat, which means you sit down with your peers, and everyone sits on the floor. So regardless, and there's even historically, when the Mughal Emperor Akbar came to meet the third Guru Amar Das Ji, he said, "I want to engage in dialogue with you." Guru Amar Das Ji actually said, prior to you meeting me, partake a meal with the community. So actually, even Akbar, the ruler of the Mughal Empire, sat on the floor with everyone else and partook in the meal, and afterwards, Guru Amar Das Ji met him. So that's an integral part of our faith. If you were to go to any Gurdwara, you would be given langar at all times, at any time, that you would have that you would even have any time available to you. And everyone's welcome at a Gurdwara, regardless of caste, creed, or religion, regardless of you like to Sikh people or not, and you will be treated exactly like one of us.
Right, Gurvinder, I wanted to ask you along the lines. If you could tell us a bit about your rituals, your prayers, your meditations, spiritual practices that you're engaged in, and is it like certain belief systems, certain religions where there's an illumination, an enlightenment that can come in this life, or is the goal to be good in this life so you can enjoy a wonderful afterlife?
Absolutely. So in the Sikh faith, in our religious, in our scriptures, it says, "Pai prapat mano ko deoriya gobind milan ki teri bariya," that you have been given this life and you have been blessed this life by the Almighty, so that you can in turn merge with the divine light or merge with the Almighty after your life. So meaning that you engage in a life of such principles and adhere to righteousness and also the code of ethics and conduct, and you meditate upon the Almighty and you live accordingly, that, God willing, once you pass, you merge with the divine light. So the goal is, so we don't believe in an afterlife, if you will, or you do something now and you'll be given, paradise or what have you, but it's you engage in this life so you can merge with the Almighty, if you will. So if that makes sense.
Right.
So because our soul is inherently, to people of faith, the most important is the soul. That's what makes you move. That's what drives you. That's what you're composed of, and your soul acts in such a way that it, in essence, goes back home, if you will.
Right, and your spiritual practices that are taught by your faith.
Yes. So the spiritual practices, when we wake up, we meditate upon the Almighty. We have prayers that we pray, and scriptures that we read in the morning when you wake up, to thank God for the night that had just passed. Then in the evening, we have prayers as well, and you thank God for the day that had just passed. And at night, prior to going to sleep, you thank God for the day had just passed and for the night that is coming up to pass, pass peacefully as well. And of course, from our scriptures, many people will read at all times of the day, whenever they have any moment to them. So there's not like a guideline or a set standard or practice, if you will. But scriptures are to be, there is something called Amrit Vela, which means early in the morning, during the ambrosial hours, if you will, to meditate upon the Almighty. And in the evening and at night is certainly when you would read your prayers. But you're welcome to do them any time of the day, at your leisure, at break time at work, lunchtime at work, and whenever you would have the opportunity.
And tell us what the communal aspect of a gurdwara is, what we think of as services. And I know that, because I've experienced it, there's a musical element to Sikh practice that's very similar to what Hindu kirtan. Can you describe what goes on when people come together at the Gurdwara?
Yes. So actually, kirtan is of Sikh origin, actually, and Hindus have actually borrowed the term and also the practice. But you're absolutely right. We have a harmonium, which is somewhat akin to an accordion, and we have tablas, which are somewhat akin to bongo drums. So our scriptures, the Guru Granth Sahib, all 1,430 pages, is in prose, so it all rhymes. And each stanza is actually set in accordance to music, set in different rags, in different tunes, and in different musical connotations. So while our prayers are read, it's human nature. If I was to speak to you, but if I was to set that to music, it would captivate you even further. So our prayers, so it is kirtan which takes place, but what the priest, if you will, we don't have a priestly class. Anybody can do kirtan, but typically it'll be the caretaker of gurdwaras. What they're reciting during kirtan, during music, is going to be from the scriptures, the Guru Granth Sahib, and then they will be singing that. And once you enter the Gurdwara, you bow down to the Guru Granth Sahib, meaning that we succumb to your teachings, and we will abide by, and we will implement these teachings in our lives. And then you sit down. Everyone sits down together. Women are not set in a different room, or children are not taken in a different room, or men are not, elevated anywhere else. But everyone sits on the floor, and everyone sits in the same room. You have the Guru Granth Sahib. You have the caretakers reciting the verses from the Guru Granth Sahib into music, and you will typically sometimes have Then you have speeches or announcements as to what's going on with the community, or updates regarding local events or international events. And then obviously, all while this is ongoing, you have Langar, which is a community kitchen. So you're free to go there, partake in the community meal, come back, and it's just a continuous cycle throughout the visitation to a Gurdwara. And a Gurdwara is also a place of not just a place of religious learning, but a place of community activism, a place of community empowerment, where if you were to have someone who's homeless, they would be given shelter. If you were to have someone who's hungry, they would be given nourishment. If you would have someone who's seeking education, you would have classes and so forth. Computer literacy classes take place at Gurdwaras. You have to acclimate yourselves with English. You have English as secondary language classes taking place at Gurdwaras and so forth. So it's really a meeting place for the community.
Yeah, Gurvinder, one final question from me, and then Phil can follow up, is where can somebody find out more about the Sikh faith? And if people are listening before, I think it's July 10th, 2017, there will be a big conference in the States that you'll be holding. So if you could tell us where people can find out more about the Sikh faith and also about the conference.
So Sikhs, so you can find out about the Sikh faith very easy. Now I think somebody told me that one of my friends said, I don't believe in God, I believe in Google. So so I get everything from there. You can obviously Google, but there's a website, wearesikhs.org. Sikhs.org. Organization is unitedsikhs.org, UNITEDSIKHS.org. We are having a Sikh summit in the week of July 10th to the 14th. We're also going to have our advocacy and humanitarian aid academy for youth all over the United States and all over the world to come and take part in community activism. And also this will be held in Washington, D.C., because where we will be engaging with our lawmakers, various congressmen and congresswomen and senators regarding the issues that we were discussing of bullying or hate crimes, or about the U.S. Census, and how we can engage further of how not just to help the Sikh community, but when you're helping, but when you're fighting against bullying, it helps anybody who's encountering bullying. When you're fighting against hate crimes, it just doesn't help the Sikh community. It helps anyone who's a threat, or who becomes under threat simply because of who they are, or who they profess to be, or they profess to love, and so forth. And so that is occurring the week of July the 10th in Washington, D.C., and we would encourage all of your listeners and patrons to please engage with us and work with us, because it's, in fact, the organization United Sikhs, even though it has the word Sikh in it, many members are non-Sikhs, because they've seen the work that we do all across the world. And whether it be Haiti, or whether it be during Hurricane Sandy, or whether it be the tornadoes in Moore, Oklahoma, or whether it be the earthquake in Nepal, or whether it be the landslides and the immense flooding going on in Peru, or the food bank in Kenya, the majority of people that are impacted by these disasters are not Sikhs. In fact, I would say maybe next to none are, but it is humanity. It is our fellow brother and sister who is impacted. So again, if we can't choose to stay silent if we see someone who's suffering. And I would like to just share a small story. A langar was originated by Guru Nanak Sahib when the first Guru, when his father actually gave him 20 rupees. But 500 years ago, 20 rupees was thousands of dollars. A lot of money, because he was given that money to start a business. So his father says, "Hey, I want you to go start a business. Here's some money. Go to the city." He goes and he's traveling, and he sees villages that are just under terrible conditions of drought. The animals are passing away. The crop is drying up. So he decides to go to the market and purchase food, sustenance, grains, and so forth to provide for the thousands of residents of the villages he has encountered. And they literally for 5 to 6 months are able to survive because of what he has purchased and what he has provided. So when he goes back home, his dad's like, well, so what business did you start? He says, well, I started the true business, the work of God. And his dad's like, that's not what I gave you the money for. So he got, he was scolded and so forth. But from literally, I can tell you guys, Dennis Phil, that from those 20 rupees 500 years ago, we have programs, beautiful programs like the Langar programs at the Parliament of World Religions. It is because of those 20 rupees that are still ongoing today to provide nourishment and sustenance for thousands and thousands of people the world over.
Great. Well, thank you, Gurvinder, and we appreciate your coming on. We want to send people. Your website will be listed on ours when we post this, and people can learn more about Sikhism and the events coming up and the campaign you're doing with the Census Bureau to establish Sikhs as a recognized minority group.
Yes, absolutely.
So thank you very much for coming on and enlightening us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, we really appreciate your time. We really appreciate your insight, and we appreciate the opportunity. God bless you guys, and keep doing the great work you're doing.
Great. We look forward to having you on again. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, guys.